Hello, and welcome to the Wayfinder Psychedelic Podcast. This is a space for seekers, healers, coaches, and curious souls navigating the inner terrain of transformation. I'm Joy Whitmore.
And I'm Kristen Shirky. Together, we explore the intersection of wayfinding wisdom, psychedelic healing, and the magic that unfolds when we slow down and listen deeply to ourselves, to the medicine, and to one another.
This podcast is part story sharing, part soul inquiry, part practical toolkit, all rooted in reverence for the feminine path of transformation. Let us begin. So, Today's episode is actually kind of a continuation of our first podcast, part one of the origin story. I love that term, by the way, for so many reasons to be learned soon. I'm here with Kristen today, and I'm super excited because I feel like Kristen's inquisitiveness is basically what kind of brought us all together. And I feel like she's kind of the mastermind behind what we have formed as the Wayfinder Psychedelic Collective. Um, she and I have had many experiences together over these past couple of years. And she's actually been one of the first founders that co-facilitated a journey with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the amazing magic that happened there. Um, we have traveled more than anybody I even know. We've been to Ohio, Florida, Mexico, and North Carolina, and we're in the process of planning a Costa Rica trip. Kristen, I'm so glad that you're here today. How about you tell us how you started our whole idea behind why this community is coming together?
I'm so honored that you think of me as the mastermind. It means a lot to me. Um, I think I have a story that a lot of people can relate to. I was in the corporate world for about 12 years. I felt burnt out and struggling with being dissociated, and I didn't figure any of that out at the time, but I realized that when the pandemic hit and I was able to start working remotely, how much that was important to me, like how much working in an open office floor plan was not good for my nervous system. And I
Mm,
ended up volunteering to be coached by a friend who was going through a coaching training program. And in talking to him, realized this, this is what I meant to do. This is the thing that I'm kind of already good at. I just need the tools. And because I had the freedom to work from home, I started looking at possibly doing a coaching training program. And I I genuinely stumbled on Martha. I had never heard of her before. A lot of people had read her books or were in her orbit. I had no clue, but I was reading a book called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and they mentioned Martha Beck being Oprah's life coach as I was researching coaching programs and feeling overwhelmed about how to pick one. And I thought, okay, I'll look into this. And I ended up signing up for her training program, which is probably the best decision I've ever made
yeah,
because
you and me both.
yeah, I ended up with a just a wonderful cohort of people, in particular, Anahí, who I instantly felt like sister energy. Like I had known her my whole life, and we ended up
And Anahí is one of our,
one of our founding members, who I'm sure
yes.
you will all meet at some point.
Yeah.
Um, she and I have similar childhood experiences and sort of um, trauma issues. And we both have this like insatiable desire to read self-help books and find the answers. And so we were kind of on this journey together, and we again sort of stumbled on psychedelics. Neither of us had ever done drugs before. We both are, control is our coping mechanism. So the idea of losing control is not appealing. Um, but we watched a few documentaries, including How to Change Your Mind, and both felt particularly drawn to mushrooms. And me being a fact finder, I started researching them. And I saw some advice somewhere about different ways that you could experience a journey. And one of the recommendations was to go on a retreat somewhere, particularly where psychedelics were legal, because worst case scenario, if you didn't have like an amazing trip, you at least had a nice vacation, like you went somewhere warm or whatever. And I loved that advice. Like, yeah, that's such a good idea. So I stumbled on this gorgeous looking retreat in Mexico that was incredibly expensive, and Anahí and I just started dreaming about ways that we could afford it. And the more we thought about it, we realized what we really cared about was who would be holding space for us during the journey. The rest of the stuff would come after that. So she guided me through an exercise where I thought about like my ideal sitter. Who did I want to be holding space for me? And something clicked.
It's such a wayfinder way to do things, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were definitely practicing our tools during our training for sure. But something clicked for me, and I realized that we should try to find a fellow wayfinder, somebody who spoke that same language, who used the same tools, who also worked with psychedelics. And so I tried to search for psychedelics in the coaching directory on the Wayfinder site, and nothing came up. So then I Googled Wayfinder and psychedelics, and I found a podcast that you had done. Um, and I listened to it and I knew like I had to reach out to you, which I did. And you got back to me right away. You were so gracious. You were so excited. Like, yes, I'll talk about this with anybody. I want people to know about psychedelics.
Ironically, you couldn't find me in the directory because that's when I was at a point where I was still not really sure about outing myself.
Yeah,
So I hadn't updated it was very vanilla. So I'm really glad that, I mean, this is the pivotal point of the story. The fact that you put those two terms into Google search engine. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Um, I just immediately felt the same with Ani. Like our energies meshed. Like it felt like we had known each other in a past lifetime or something. Just immediately felt comfortable with you. Um, Felt seen. Like you answered all of our questions. You didn't make us feel stupid for being new to the space or not knowing anything. Um, and we just like the relationship started from there. You were generous enough to guide me through three separate macro journeys, including coming with me to Mexico for an experience that would end up being more life-changing than I could possibly have known at the time. And I was able to be there to help facilitate Anahí's journey, and have never felt more connected to people in my life. I mean, that was a very unexpected experience. And I think through all of that and our continued connection, the three of us knew how powerful and healing these experiences could be, and we wanted to incorporate them into our coaching. You were already doing that, but Ani and I for sure like wanted to be integration coaches. Um, and then the magic led you to meet Sam through the Wayfinder training, and you introduced her to me, and I had that same feeling meeting her that I had known her forever. Um, and you got the ball rolling on bringing us all together to talk about these things on a regular basis. Like put something on the calendar, let's meet monthly, let's keep this conversation going. And it transformed into this thing, and here we are.
And that was really scary for me. I mean, it was
Yeah.
definitely all of you, excuse me, being engaged and being curious because it gave me just the continued consistency to like, okay, you probably don't even know this, but probably the first good half a dozen calls, I would like psych myself up. My lizards were like, what are you doing? Who are
Yeah.
you? Why are people going to want to listen to you or spend time with you? So, and just knowing how impactful these relationships have become now,
No.
it just really, I mean, there's so much beauty in that. And thank you for sharing your story. I want to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
And throughout the macro journeys, let's talk about some of the magic and some of the very interesting things that were encountered. Um, I believe the first time you had your journey, you also immediately co-facilitated a journey for a family member.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that because that came with a very interesting surprise for me.
Yeah. That I wasn't expecting to do that. I was so new to everything, and I was definitely nervous before my own experience, like I said, having never done drugs. So I think it kind of worked out well, and it sort of hindered my family member. It was a balance. This particular family member was maybe even more nervous than I was. So me going first, going the day before, I think helped them relax a little bit. They like needed the proof that it was okay. I was okay, you know? But they also were a little self-conscious about me being there and like weren't comfortable with me being in the room, at least at the beginning. Um, so I ended up microdosing with you both, but I was not directly in the room for maybe the first hour or two. And then once it became clear that they like were very chilled out and relaxed, weren't doing anything crazy. Um, I started to move more into the room. You asked me to sit, like, when you needed bathroom breaks and stuff.
Yeah, that's the whole. I started to realize, one of the reasons why I was driven to help anybody who wanted to come into this space was because I've been doing this work by myself and
Mm,
not realizing like you need to be super attentive to that person in that journey. And even going to the bathroom can, disrupt whatever they're dealing with. So I was so grateful that you were willing, and I could see within you that ability to step into that space and that role. So yeah, you being there was super helpful. So please go ahead.
well, you seem to need to run to the bathroom a few times, and you finally said something to me like, man, like something's going on with my stomach. And I just immediately knew it was like, well, that kind of makes you the perfect facilitator for this family member because they also struggle with these stomach issues and like digestive problems. And you looked at me like, oh my God, it's not mine. It's this family member's. I'm picking up on their symptoms. I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So that was very much new to me. And I think then that you were able to reassure the family member
Yeah,
it's okay to let this go, right? Like it helped you realize what you needed to do to support them.
yeah.
So I
And
don't know, did they go away after that? Did the symptoms go away?
yes, I
Okay. Yeah.
literally went to the bathroom, I think, after that.
Yeah.
And after you like gave me this other perspective that it wasn't me, and this is why I think it's so beautiful and magical to have a trusted co-facilitator sometimes because I didn't have any other perception of this was my stuff. And then once
Yeah.
you asked me that simple question, I feel like within 15 or 20 minutes I was in the bathroom and was letting go of all of that literally and
Yep.
physically.
Yep. And I definitely sensed that that was the message of this family member's journey was like deeply relax and let go. So that makes a ton of sense. And I had worried ahead of time, um, being neurodivergent and having ADHD, I couldn't imagine doing what you do, sitting with someone for 8 hours and just sort of being like, don't you want to distract yourself, like watch something or read something? And I had asked you about it, and you said, no, there's something about it. And I think the microdosing helps, right? You're genuinely connected to the other person. Um, and you had a lot of experience holding space for people as a coach on top of that. I didn't have as much experience with even that piece yet, still being in the training. So I got just a tiny glimpse of it in that experience. Oh yeah, I could just sort of sit and be. I didn't feel bored or like I needed to go do something else. And I wasn't for 8 hours, so it didn't end up being an issue at all. But I I could tell what you were talking about briefly with that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. You mentioned microdosing, so I want to kind of transition into a story
Mhm.
where microdosing became more than just microdosing and
Yes.
your second co-facilitation. So let's talk about that one.
Yeah, I for Ani's journey, it felt a little more planned. Like, yes, I'm going to be there to help out however I can. She and I have this connection. It definitely puts her at ease to make sure that I am there with her. Um, and so the plan was to microdose as you usually do. And I don't know if you want to explain how you
Yeah,
even
do you want
got
to, yeah, talk a little bit about why in the beginning I didn't microdose with the client, but
right.
go ahead and
Yeah.
talk about that.
You told me at one point that yeah, you didn't used to do that, and then at some point in talking to other facilitators, you got the recommendation that you should take a little so that you're taking the same medicine, you're connected to this other person, and that you know like when it's hitting them, like you're in the phases with them, you know what's going on. And that made a ton of sense to me. So that was the strategy. But in this particular instance, you didn't tell me how much we took, and you didn't tell us until later that something nudged you to like do a little more, add just a little bit more. And I was not expecting for it to hit quite as hard as it did.
Nor
Um,
was I,
right.
but we think that there might be a reason for that.
Yes. And I definitely remember you as part of your ritual, you always have people draw an oracle card beforehand and then read about it after the experience. So what we all took the medicine together and we drew our oracle cards and then we went into this lovely little sunroom that felt like our own world. And maybe half an hour into it, I started to feel like I was very heavy and couldn't move. And so I just laid down on a couch across from Anahí, and I was just looking at her. I was just so attuned to her. And we realized after the fact, like she pulled us in. She
She
needed
did.
that
I was clinging to
support.
the floor at
Yeah.
that point. And
It,
just to be clear, I mean, it was literally like 0.3 of a gram. So it was, maybe three times the amount of a microdose.
yeah,
Yeah. So a
a
creative
creative
dose.
us,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I hadn't done before. And I felt a little nauseous at the beginning, but that dissipated quickly. And I remember I started crying. And you looked at me and you're like, why are you crying? And I felt no sadness. I just looked at you and I'm like, I don't, it's hers. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Ask her. And that became a pretty big theme. We realized she drew the tear card and tears were a big part of her journey. And she
Yes.
was like seeing my eyes and seeing the tears in them. That was like the reflection that she needed. So it was such a magical experience.
It was. I've
Like
never felt that pulled in by any
yeah,
other client ever. Like
yeah,
her magic is strong.
it is.
And yeah, we all pretty much held each other up during that
Yep.
experience.
And it was such a different experience from my macro journey because I wore a blindfold and I had headphones on. It was very introspective. And hers, she opted not to do that. So she had her eyes closed sometimes and then she would like sit up and tell us something. So it was very much more a community thing. So I didn't know how much you could feel connected through the mushrooms. And
Yes.
I'm so grateful that we got to have that experience.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That was one that I will definitely put in the books because I want to remember
Mhm.
how that was. And just even you mentioning the sunroom takes me back there.
Yep.
And I think that's important to keep in mind about integration. Just remembering sights
Yeah.
and smells and sensations can connect us back to that experience.
Yep.
Um, will you tell us about your next experience briefly in Mexico? I
Yeah.
mean, thank you for taking me to Mexico for your birthday. That was
Ah,
great.
great. Um, yeah, I mean, I stayed on that path of trying to find healing, and we ended up reading a book together called It Didn't Start With You. That's all about essentially intergenerational trauma and the stuff that we carry that isn't necessarily ours, and we don't even realize that it's not ours. And I mean, that was a totally new concept to me. I had heard of epigenetics, certainly, but not dug into it in any way. And I think I thought of it in a more academic sense, like, oh, this only affects people who were like slave ancestors, right? Or Holocaust survivors. I didn't think of it in terms of my own just like normal family experience. Um, so that book was kind of life-changing for me. And in reading it, it sort of helps you find your core wound, like a sentence that really resonates with you. And there's lots of different ways to get at it, but I remember one of the questions was like, what's your greatest fear? What's the worst thing that could happen to you? And what immediately came to my mind was no one will believe me. And there are, I'm getting that from all different sides of my family, it turns out. Um, but I knew that was what I wanted to take into my next journey. I wanted to deal with that particular wound of not being believed. And so yeah, I decided that because I had been so drawn to that retreat that I found in Mexico, like I kind of want to do this in Mexico. I don't know why. I'm just trusting this thing. And originally we tried to make it so that all three of us could go, and that didn't totally work out, unfortunately. But you were game, you were all in.
Always
And so
game.
we found this lovely Airbnb in Tulum. I think you and Ani had both been to Tulum
Yeah.
already. I had never been, but you both assured me that it was a magical place. Um, and I ended up, it was magical, but not in the ways I expected. Um, it was more silly things that like my hair looked incredible and I wasn't expecting
Right
that. My curls are
there.
usually so difficult with humidity, but me and the jungle just we're friends. And like I remember being a little disappointed in the the very stark divide of Tulum of the locals being so poverty stricken and there being trash everywhere, and then you go to the beach where all the fancy all-inclusive resorts are and things are very different. I hate that kind of thing. So I was just very aware of it. Um, but there is something about that place. And even like you and I swam in a cenote, did this like bat cave tour that was magical.
But
Uh,
wait, you're missing the really magical piece was we went to the ruins
yes,
during a partial solar eclipse. I
yes.
honestly think you and I experienced some extraterrestrial healing or
Hmm.
something from that little
Yep.
visit. It was because both of us had body issues, right? Prior
Yeah.
to visiting there.
Yep. That I don't think we intentionally planned to be there at the eclipse. The timing just kind of worked out that we realized we were going to be there. And it wasn't a place that was like directly in the path. There were other places in the world where you were gonna experience the full eclipse, but I didn't care about that. I just knew like, oh, if we're gonna be there, I want to be at these ruins during the eclipse. And we ended up microdosing while we were there and just sort of being, just sort of sitting with it.
It
And
was amazing.
it was lovely and warm. And, there's people around, but nobody bothered us. And there were iguanas everywhere. And they were weirdly drawn to me. Like I kept connecting with them somehow. I'd stop and look at one and it would stop and look at me. I just felt very connected to everything again. And we even microdosed and like had massages. That was the best massage I've ever had in my life.
Right?
I don't know if it was the mushrooms or the fact that we were connected or they were just really gifted, really good at what they did, but that was a whole different level of experience. Um, and then for my actual journey, I again did blindfold and headphones, so it was introspective. Um, I felt similarly that I didn't get any like clear messages. They weren't like consciously available to me. I remember enjoying the whole thing. It was very pleasant. I The music was such a big part of it for me for both of them. But this one in particular, I kept thinking how perfect it was. The weather was perfect, the place was perfect. I could hear all the wind and birds, and it felt like it was part of the music. It's like the whole universe is music. Um, and the gliding afterwards was maybe more magical for me
Mm,
because
yeah,
I just remember seeing you and feeling like sometimes you were me and sometimes you were you
yeah.
and there were all this color on you. Your curls were like rainbow and I there were these tribal markings that would change, like come and go on your face.
Super
Uh
cool.
yeah, and I I think I looked at you and told you that you were beautiful and perfect just the way that you were. And I think in that moment I was sort of talking to myself too,
Yep.
but you told me later that you ended up like you've used that the way that I looked at you. You at first you told me there was no way to not believe you the way that you said it. And
Yeah,
then
it was intense.
yeah, and that you used it in like your own loving kindness meditations
Absolutely.
that you
Yeah.
could sense that.
Yeah.
Um But you asked me some questions afterwards about what I experienced, and I told you a few things without even being consciously aware of where they were coming from. They just sort of came out of my mouth. So I told you that I felt some kind of like big cat energy,
Yeah.
and I told you that um it could be done now. Like I had put something down. I can only assume that meant like this idea of not being believed, that I didn't need to carry that anymore. And that my grandmother came to visit. She died when I was 5. So
Yes.
I don't visually remember any of those things. I can't tell you when they happened in the journey, but I said them very confidently to
Yeah.
you. Um, and I didn't end up figuring out what that meant for over a year, but that place was still, when you talked about how to integrate, I still to this day use that room as my safe space when I'm doing my parts meditations. And it works particularly well because the living room had like a glass French door to the outside to this gorgeously landscaped backyard and the pool. And when I have to do when I have to ask parts to give me a little space, I like doing a version where they're in another room, but they can still see me. So that's a perfect spot. It's like,
Oh,
could you just go outside for a minute? You can still see me in here. I'm not going anywhere, but I need a little bit of space. And like, you can go hang out in the pool, right? Like you can go have a great time in the backyard. Um,
I love that.
yeah,
Um, so this was even before we started meeting,
right.
correct? Yeah. So
Yes.
we hadn't even formulated like any of what we're working on now with the Wayfinder Psychedelic Collective.
Right.
It was just actually a few months after that. I think I think through the experience with you and Anahí and then you and me in Mexico, it just was becoming clearer to me
Yeah.
that this work was so much better with Wayfinder tools and with
Mm,
Wayfinder coaches. Um, and then you have shown up for every meeting. You've contributed such amazing ideas, some of which we hope to explore in the near future. What are you? I know that there's another journey that maybe we won't have a time to get into because there's so much to talk about for that most recent one.
yeah.
But what have you been working on lately, and how are you planning on using this in your own coaching practice?
So, yeah, we probably don't have time to get into the latest journey, but the only thing I will say about that is you and Sam both had some more difficult experiences, and you ended up going down a fact finder rabbit hole trying to explain like how can these things happen? And
Oh, yeah, I
yeah,
forgot about. Okay, thank you for reminding me.
you stumbled on a paper, I never remember what it stands for, but PSIP, this academic white paper that I read the day before my journey, and I devoured it. Like, I have never been able to read academic papers, and I sat down and I read this whole 25-page paper, and I was like reading parts of it to you aloud because I felt like it was written for me. It explained so much about my life, including being dissociated, and that I had spent probably most of my life in that state. So I probably wasn't able to go as deep as other people during my psychedelic journeys because I wasn't connected to my body. My
Yeah,
brain would spin and protect me. So it was like pleasant, but I wasn't having any sort of like ego death or seeing, movies play out, anything like that. Um, but this paper just explained so much about how our nervous system works and how that can impact psychedelics. And that I like knew instantly this is the key. This is the thing that people need help with, especially in our culture. Like this is a unique thing that we struggle with. We are so cut off from our bodies, and they are necessary to have these experiences. And in particular, mushrooms and ayahuasca and the other more traditional psychedelics, if in order to have a mystical, transcendent experience, you have to be able to let go of self,
mm,
a sense of self and your ego. And if you don't have a sense of self because you've been dissociated, there's nothing to let go of. So you're sort of spiritually bypassing without realizing.
yeah,
So I went into that experience thinking, oh, well, I'm either going to have a similar thing happen where I don't go very deep, but I will at least know why this time, and I will know what to do about it afterwards. Or I've done enough work in my own therapy and everything with somatic work and parts work that maybe I will be able to go a little deeper this time. So we can certainly talk about that at a later date. But um, I learned through that and the other healing books that I had read along my journey how important somatics were. Like I said, I do somatic parts work in my therapy. It has been life-changing. So I ended up kind of considering maybe I wanted to do an apprenticeship with this PSIP work. But you have to be a therapist to do that. So I went kind of down a rabbit hole of do I want to? I had considered being a therapist in the past and decided not to do that. Is this a thing I should consider again? And what I ended up doing, I signed up to get certified as a psychosomatic practitioner. It's a 6-month program. We started last week, and that's through the Integrative Psych Institute. And I will also be doing their parts therapy training. Because I know how healing and magical it has been for me and how important it is for people. And I think you and I, like, we've all been figuring out how helpful these things are specifically for psychedelics, uh,
yes,
to make sure that you are open and prepared. And like we all believe that the medicine gives you what you can handle. It shows you what you're meant to see in that moment. But there are also ways we can work with it to be as open as possible, right? To help have the experience that we need to have in a safe and healthy way.
Well put. Well put. So, Kristen, you're very active in our Mighty Networks community. You regularly attend our events. Um, we've been discussing maybe a psychedelic book club.
Hmm.
Um, and I know that you have been leading clubs for a long time. So, just wanted to maybe throw that out there.
Yeah.
We've been reading several books that are excellent on the topic. Most recently was the consciousness medicine one. And so I don't know, I'm kind of nudging Kristen a bit, but if people wanted to work with you, because you have a rich toolbox of knowledge. I mean, only not only being a Wayfinder certified coach, but also now doing the somatic work, which is incredible. And you're so well studied and read, and your own life experience makes you someone very unique to work with.
Thank you.
Um, so I know right now you're not actively pursuing clients, but there may be someone in our community who'd be interested since your story maybe resonated with them.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to share about how to get in touch with you or just come into the Mighty Networks? And
Yeah. We figured out the other day you can definitely send direct messages. So yeah, Kristen Shirky, feel free to look me up there and send me a note. I will make it happen. I am definitely open, especially with people in this group who we know do the work, have the tools, have the language. I struggle to work with people who aren't ready to face whatever it is they need to face. We all are there at one point or another, but my strengths lie in people who are right there figuring it out, learning the same thing I needed to learn. Like, oh, I can't just rationalize everything. It just can't all be explained with language sometimes. I need to know what's going on in my body. And yes, I've participated in a book club for over 4 years now. I co-led it for over a year or for a year. And I've learned a lot of things from that experience and from the podcasts that I've listened to, like what kind of framework helps facilitate discussion, like having a clear agenda, doing sort of the same thing every time puts people at ease that they know how long we're going to spend on a particular topic. And it's certainly given me ideas. I've translated that into book clubs at different jobs that I've had. I'm very comfortable leading those kinds of discussions, asking prompting questions to get people to think about certain things, um, making ritual out of it because that's what
ooh,
helps us connect and feel belonging. Is how I've created community. That's the biggest thing I've gotten from that book club. I feel like those people have my back, that they are genuinely some of my people.
yeah,
Um, so I would be happy if people have books they're interested in reading, and I would say they probably don't all have to be exactly about psychedelics, right? We've got lots of different areas of interest in this
yes,
group.
yes.
So,
We'll be talking about this soon too, but
yep.
definitely want to bring up because I know you and I could probably sit here and talk for hours, and we
Yes,
have
I have.
explored things for hours. We have definitely embraced what they say in the Caribbean is liming, which means just sitting around and doing nothing all day. We have definitely crushed hours of Marvel shows
Yep.
together. So Kristen and I this will not be our last time that we come together for a podcast. And we just want to give you a little taste of our origin story. And in the next couple of months, we're going to be having some more integration circles. We're going to be discussing other topics like music. And Kristen didn't even mention her extensive experience in the world of opera as an opera singer. So when we get to the music and psychedelics podcast and other events, we'll definitely have her share some of her insights and experiences from within that community, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Kristen is so wonderful at coming up with ideas. And obviously, she's the one who Googled this whole start to this project. So I'm looking forward to more of her showing up for us in the Wayfinder Psychedelic Collective. And anything you want to share before we end? I know I kind of cut you short, but
No,
any.
no. You warned me what our time limit was. I just this whole thing has truly been magical, and I mean that with all of my heart. And I started this journey being very skeptical about that sort of thing and not being woo. I would not describe myself as woo, because I had protective parts that wouldn't let me go
Yep,
there.
yep.
As a person who grew up obsessed from age 11 with Harry Potter and magic, it's just very funny to me that I wouldn't let myself go there. And all of these different experiences have helped me realize the signs were there the whole time, but I'm now finally paying attention and listening. And I don't care if it's real. I don't care if I can't explain it to somebody else. I like how it feels. I like living my life this way. So
Mm,
if
yeah.
you feel like you are also a skeptical person, it doesn't mean that you will always be this that way. If you don't want to be, if you'd like to open up a bit more, it's also okay if you are. But magic is real for me. So
Yes, yes. Thanks, Kristen. And just as a reminder, for those of you who haven't joined the community yet and you're hearing this podcast, you can find us on Mighty Networks by searching for Wayfinder Psychedelic Collective. You can go to our website at psychedelicwayfinder.com. And if you're interested in joining us in our next 8-week microdosing exploration, doesn't matter if you're a wayfinder or not. I just want to throw that out there. Just the willingness to tap into the body's wisdom and allow yourself to be guided towards your North Star is basically what a wayfinder is. So if you feel that resonates with you and you want to be in community and have amazing resources and tools to help you enhance your microdosing journey, look for us to start a new cohort in August of this year. And thank you for those of you who are listening. And thank you, Kristen, for all of your insight, input, and efforts. We love you.
love you too. It's an honor.